tree crashes. What kind of tree is it? It was a sycamore. The sign of national judgment, the sycamore has fallen, right in order, and just like the other harbingers, the people make it into a symbol. They take the fallen sycamore and they put it on display, and they call it the sycamore of ground zero. They celebrate the sycamore. New Yorkers come to see the sycamore without realizing that it is an ancient harbinger of judgment. The harbinger of the sycamore appears in America, the sign of uprooting for a nation, the sixth harbinger. The vow continues. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will plant cedars in their place. This is another vow of defiance. See, the natural thing would have been to replace an old sycamore with a new sycamore, but they don't do that. The sycamore was a plain tree, was an even weak tree. The people of Israel clear away the fallen sycamores. They go to plant a cedar in the exact place where the sycamore has stood. Now, what tree is it? Now, when you read in English, you read cedar, but behind that is a Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is erez, or the erez tree. Erez can mean cedar, but it specifically means more than cedar. It means a conifer tree, or a coniferous tree, an evergreen conifer tree, a tree with pines or needle-like leaves. But most specifically, the most accurate translation of erez, we will plant an erez tree. The most accurate translation is the word panacea, a panacea tree, a tree of the panacea family. What they're saying is that we're going to come back stronger. We're going to plant a stronger tree. The cedar was a much stronger tree to represent that we will not be uprooted, but we're going to come back again stronger. We're going to bloom. We're going to prosper like a tree. We're going to grow taller. So it becomes another symbol of the nation and of its defiance against God. Could this happen? Would this happen in America? The seventh harbinger to be manifested. As we saw in the wake of 9/11, a sycamore was struck down. But now the people of America or New York have to replace that tree, not with a sycamore, which would be natural, but with a different tree, and that tree has to be a Hebrew erez tree. Could that have happened? Well, an amazing thing. 3 years later, after 9/11, a sign, a tree appears in the sky on a crane being lowered over a fence at the corner of ground zero. It's lowered into the exact spot where once stood a sycamore tree. What is that tree? That tree, the erez tree, has to be a conifer. The tree is a conifer. The erez tree is specifically a panacea tree. The tree that they chose to replace the sycamore of ground zero was a panacea tree, which is the biblical erez tree. And just as with the other harbingers, they have a ceremony around the tree, and they gather around it and they proclaim this is the tree of hope, just like the tree of Israel's planting was their tree of their national hope. They celebrate the defiant nature of human hope, and they declare it, this is now the ground zero tree of hope. And the one who officiates over the ceremony literally makes reference to this act. And in Hebrew, the act is called chalaf. It means replace or plant in the place of another. It says, this tree of hope is planted in the exact spot, he proclaims, where the sycamore once stood. And this is all taking place in the corner of ground zero. all these things manifesting, the sixth and seventh harbinger together, and nobody is planning this out. Nobody is figuring it out. Nobody's saying, let's do this with this. It's just happening. As with the rest of the harbingers, they happen because they have to happen. They have to be manifested. So now, in order, even the seventh harbinger is manifested at the corner of ground zero.
Our confidence shaken. Though we are living through difficult and uncertain times,
the eighth harbinger is the utterance, is the vow of defiance that Israel utters against God after the strike, in connection with that strike. We're seeing that the harbingers actually determine not only the actions of people, the actions of American leaders, but also the actual words. And the people may have said that vow. We will rebuild, we will plant, we'll come back stronger. The people may have said that, but the leaders had to have said it, because it's only significant if the leaders say it, because the leaders determine the course of the nation. The leaders represent the nation. So the leaders would have to make the vow, and they're the only ones who really could authoritatively make it. We will rebuild, and let me just say the vow again. The bricks have fallen, but we will rebuild with quarried stone. The sycamores have been struck down, but we will plant cedars in their place. And where would they have proclaimed it? The leaders would have proclaimed it in the capital city, because that's where they resided, in Samaria. So, for the eighth harbinger to manifest in America, what has to happen is that an American leader, or a prominent American leader, would have to proclaim these words of defiance in a public setting in the capital city. Now, could this happen? Because what American leader in their right mind would be proclaiming a verse of judgment on the nation? Well, the amazing thing is, it happened. It would have to be linked to 9/11, because the words are linked to the strike of ancient Israel. So it has to happen in the capital, has to happen in Washington, D.C. So he gets up to speak, and he has no idea what he's about to do. These are his actual words. He says this: "Good morning. Today, on this day of remembrance and mourning, we have the Lord's word to get us through." And these are the words.
"The bricks have fallen, but we will build with dressed stones. The sycamores have been cut down, but we will put cedars in their place."
Out of some 30,000 verses in the Bible he thought would be inspiring to his audience, he chooses the one verse that's about the judgment of a nation that has just received the first strike and the first warning to speak to commemorate 9/11. And not only does he say this, but he builds his entire speech around the ancient vow. His whole speech is a manifestation of the vow. He goes on to say this: "Let me show you how we are building and putting cedars in those three hallowed places." He goes on, "And in a place where smoke once rose, you and I, we will see that cedar rising." And he says yet again,
"And you'll see that while those bricks fell and the sycamores cut down, our people are making the cedars rise."
It's mind-boggling. It's amazing that he would say this. He doesn't realize, because no one would say this if they knew what it was. And so he's speaking allegorically. He speaks of cedars and sycamores and stones as if it was a nice poetic symbol of America's restoration. He has no idea that there is an actual cedar or erez tree that our people made rise. He has no idea that there's an actual sycamore tree that actually was struck down. He has no idea there's an actual gazit stone that we actually put up, yet he proclaims it without knowing it. He is uttering the vow, and he's now making the ancient vow. He's transforming it now into America's vow, which is ominous because that vow was sealing the fate of ancient Israel for destruction. So the eighth harbinger, the vow, the utterance, is manifested in Washington, D.C. The ninth harbinger is the vow in the form of prophecy or the prophecy. That, in other words, the vow, the ancient vow, is to be proclaimed in America by an American leader in the capital city, and it's proclaimed prophetically in advance of what is about to happen. It's going to foretell the course of America before it happens, and it's going to become part of the national record. But there's more to it, because the vow of the ancient leaders of Israel was also prophetic, because they were speaking what would happen. They were foretelling the nation's course of defiance and judgment, and it becomes part of the prophetic record of the Bible, because Isaiah quotes it as a comment on it from God's judgment on the vow, so it also becomes a prophetic utterance in that respect. What leader in their right mind would do this, proclaiming judgment on America? But the amazing thing is, it happened. On the day after 9/11, in the capital city, on Capitol Hill, a national leader, a very high national leader, the Senate Majority Leader, Tom Daschle, he is the one who's appointed to bring America's response to 9/11. So this is prophetically important. This is going to be the nation's response to 9/11. And he's representing the Senate. The Senate is representing the people. And so he is especially appointed to bear this word. And so he comes up to present the response of the nation to 9/11. And he gives a speech.
A symbol for 212 years of the strength of our democracy, and say that America will emerge from this tragedy as we have emerged from all adversity, united and strong.
And what he does at the end of the speech was ominous. I know that there is only the smallest measure
of inspiration that can be taken from this devastation. But there is a passage in the Bible from Isaiah that I think speaks to all of us at times like this.
What is it? Then he proclaims it from Capitol Hill.
The bricks have fallen down, but we will rebuild with dressed stone. The fig trees have been felled, but we will replace them with cedars.
Here is the man appointed to give the nation's response, speaking in his capacity, representing the nation. He utters the words of ancient Israel. And he closes the speech with these words. He says this:
that is what we will do. We will rebuild, and we will recover.
That is what we will do. He's referring to Isaiah 9:10. He just said it. So this is mind-boggling. What he's saying is, America's policy now, America's course will be Isaiah 9:10. And this is prophetic in so many ways. First of all, he doesn't even know, when he says this, he says the sycamores have been cut. He doesn't know that it actually happened on ground zero. The dust was still hovering over ground zero when they were discovering it as he was speaking. He doesn't know that there will actually be a stone that he proclaims, a stone will be laid at ground zero 3 years later.